chums, it is Corey from Super Kami Guru 9000, and this week's episode of Hunter x Hunter completely Shyamalan'd me. And that's because there was a major plot twist that I did not see coming. There was also another really cool twist where we got to see that one of the royal guards was actually killed by a low-level Chimera Ant, one who's walking around on crutches no less. So this was a pretty interesting episode, but at the end of the day, it was mostly a setup for next week's episode. But there were still some pretty interesting moments, so let's just talk about the highlights. So, first and foremost, one of the most major themes of the entire Chimera Ant arc has been that the Chimera Ants have finally started to introduce human DNA into their biostructure, and because of that, they're starting to regain their human memories, and they're starting to become more independent, and thus they're leaving the nest, so to speak, and trying to create their own kingdoms. We've already seen that with characters like Leol, and even the group that went up against Phantom Troop, which was all really awesome stuff here, but I like that they're still keeping the theme going, and with this character who, frankly, I didn't think was going to do really much of anything, and that is Welfin, the Chimera Ant, and I love when they introduced him for the first time, because I mentioned I just love his design. He's a wolf man with Fabio hair and 4 massive missiles on his back. That is metal as hell. You could slap that on the cover of any hardcore metal album, and it would kick so much ass. But that's beside the point. He has a confrontation with Yuppie this week, one that I don't think he intended to have, and that's because he was sort of forced by Ikalgo to start these negotiations with the king. And this is because Ikalgo knows all about Welfin's backstory and how he was connected to Gyro, and how they all used to be former friends, but they can't quite explain why some Chimera Ants have their memories and some don't. But Welfin is a wolf on a mission, and when he confronts Yuppie for the first time, he sort of convinces himself that no matter what he sees, the Chimera Ants, they're the enemy, and he finally decides to attack Yuppie. And I was really amped for the scene, because I thought like a huge action scene was going to ensue, and I thought that Yuppie was going to even maybe possibly transform into his bigger form again, because his teeth get all sharp, and he starts bleeding from the nose, and this is a huge point to remember. But that's where the scene cuts off, and then when Poof finally discovers Yuppie's body, it's still in its weird little chibi form. He is just completely destroyed, and that's it. That's the end of Yuppie. I did not see that coming, but it was a nice little plot twist. And what's really interesting about this is while this is happening, I mentioned that Yuppie's nose is bleeding. We then go back to the Chimera Ant King, who finally discovers a piece from the Gungi board, and he starts to bleed as well. And then towards the end of the episode, we get to see that Poof is starting to bleed out of his mouth and cough up blood. There is a major reason for this, and they give you a few of the illusions this week. First and foremost, Palm makes it pretty explicitly clear that the Chimera Ant King is going to die very, very soon. And there's this one scene where she's mentioning that, where you get to see they really emphasize the fact that there's this big explosion, and it's the poor man's rose bomb. And it's pretty obvious at this point that that thing was some sort of dirty bomb, and it might have been poisonous. And I'm assuming because Meruem was sort of caught right in the blast, that he is slowly dying from this, and since he took body parts from Poof and Yuppie, and they're all sort of connected at this point, they're all slowly dying from this, like, massive explosion. Basically, the latent poisonous radiation from this bomb. At least that's what I'm getting from it. They made plenty of allusions to it this week, but I'd say it's pretty obvious that's how the Chimera Ant King is going to die. Maybe he's going to take out a few more people. I'd still like to see someone else fight him, if only for the fact that he's just so nasty powerful, and I wanted to see more from this character. That's not to say the battle with Netero was not awesome. It was. I just want to see more from this character. This guy is literally like the third coming of Frieza. I only say that because we've also had a Cell and Cooler before, but still, I liked this week's episode. It had some pretty cool imagery in it, and I liked a lot of the cool metaphors that they were using. I like when Palm was discussing how cruel they are, where they showed the scene of the rhinoceros beetle that was being taken over by ants. But then she also mentioned that humans are much crueler when they show a human literally about to stomp on the ants and the beetle at the same time. It's just a nice little allegory, and it really just makes you think about some of the finer points of this entire arc. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What's the rundown on this week's episode of Hunter x Hunter? It was pretty good. It definitely had some really interesting moments. The animation and the artwork was very clean and consistent throughout the episode. Welfin looked intimidating and awesome, especially with the lighting, and Yuppie himself just looked really creepy with his really sharp teeth and his bleeding nose. That was just a really cool scene in general. The Chimera Ant King is still as unpredictable as ever, especially when Poof came into the room and he mentioned that Yuppie was dead. So Meruem's just like, oh, so the contest is over, right? Time for you to start spitting up all the shit you've been hiding from me. and it was just a really nice, intimidating scene. And then, of course, Poof at the end, who's starting to finally realize something's just not quite right yet. Pito's not back. We're coughing up blood. Things are not going good for the Chimera Ant Kingdom. But this week's episode was ultimately more of a setup for next week. But there were still a lot of really cool plot twists, and it even looks like Welfin's not going to have any good luck next week. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen. But otherwise, this was a cool episode with a lot of cool imagery and some cool plot twists. So I'm going to drop a 7 out of 10 on this episode. It's definitely worth your time if you're following the series. Check it out, guys. The more people watch the anime, the more possibility we'll get this anime in the future, because the manga just started again, and I want to see more of it in anime form because that's what I'm used to. But I already know that when all of this catches up, I am going to have to start reading the manga. I just got to know what's happening next in Hunter x Hunter. So check it out. 7 out of 10. Cool episode. If you guys checked out this week's episode of Hunter x Hunter, I would love to hear your thoughts about it. You can tell me with your comments below. Did you guys have any favorite moments from this week's episode? Did you see any of these plot twists coming? And what do you want to see from the future of Hunter x Hunter? Remember, guys, before you leave, hit that like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. It's super easy to do, and it helps out our videos tremendously. The best way to help out our videos, aside from simply watching them, is to also subscribe to the channel so you can see all of our anime and manga reviews. You can also check us out on social media like Facebook and Twitter. Links will be down below, and you can also directly donate to the channel if you would like. So, I will see you next time, guys. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.